Hey guys, how's it going? Crass here. Today I wanted to bring you a video about wizard builds for PVE, and I'm going to give you a couple options here. I'll go into builds for different activities, as well as some extra legendary items you might be able to use if you either are just bored of what you're using right now, or if you wanted to just change it up a little bit. And getting right into it, I wanted to start with your set pieces and your gems. Just to kind of get that out of the way and you know kind of what to build for. First, the Grace of the Flagellant. This is the most important thing for Wizard. Getting the 4-piece set bonus on this kind of unlocks the Wizard class, where for a long time I did have to play without this bonus, back when you couldn't craft set pieces, so I played for a long time just not getting any of the dungeon drops I needed, and could never fill out the set. And while Wizard was still good, you could definitely feel that there were times, especially with a single target, where you really kind of fell behind in damage, and it took a little too long to kill, like a Elder Rift boss even, which is pretty easy and pretty fast to kill with like when I was Necromancer, but then I noticed a big difference when I switched to Wizard, that it took much longer, wasn't necessarily harder though. And as far as the 6-piece bonus, this is a good thing to have, however, it's not important, because it's a 4% chance every 40 seconds at best. Sometimes because of it being a 4% chance, it might be longer than 40 seconds per, where in most content, like if you're fighting a boss, that means maybe it'll trigger once, and if you're overworld farming, then it might trigger on a pack that you were already going to one-shot anyway. So I don't find it too important to get that. For your other 2 pieces, you can just use, this is either like a triple stat piece, so something like this, or just something with good magic effects, or a good maybe gem socket. And as far as your gems themselves, I will say, kind of like in my previous video, sapphires are actually very important, because a lot of what you do with Wizard when you're going for a high DPS build is you use a Firestorm build, which guarantees some critical hits, so having your armor pen, you can see mine is 112 higher than Hell 6, so I'm getting 35% bonus critical damage. This is very helpful for when you have a Firestorm build where you're getting a lot of guaranteed crits, especially because if you're partying up and you get a Crusader in your party, the banner will kind of just help your critical damage even more. So it's never a wasted slot, and overall this will give you more damage than a Tourmaline if you're not kind of around this 100 or so over. If you already have, say, 200 or more armor penetration over, then there's not much of a need to go for more armor pen. However, if a new hell level's approaching, then it might still be worth it to focus on armor pen, since once you get to the new hell level, you'll need more to be above. And for your standard gems, since we're free to play, you mainly just slot in a bunch of rank 5 2-star gems for the max magic find, and because they give you as much resonance as a rank 10 1-star. And there's no reason to ever push a gem to rank 10 as free to play, since there's still not a way to get a Dawning Echo free to play. I assumed there might have been something around this Christmas event where Blizzard might have either given one out or given us some option to farm for them, but still nothing yet on that. So for now, just get 2-star gems to rank 5, and your best ones, you can just kind of copy what I have: a Fervent Fang, Bloody Reach, Power and Command, and a Cutthroat's Grin. These 4 that I'm using, these will give you the best kind of damage boost overall for Wizard, and they do transfer pretty well to other classes. Of course, Bloody Reach only transfers to the range classes, but those are best for free-to-play players anyway, so not much loss there. You see, I do have 2 5-star gems at rank 3. I'm using these just for the resonance and power boost. If you don't care about PvP, I would never even worry about getting these up because the resonance, even though it does help in PvE, it's not all that important, and I would prefer the magic find. And for your other 2-star gems, if you don't have any 5 stars you want to slot in, I would go for Volatility Shard next. This will kind of just help out your overworld farming by getting a free additional AoE every 6 seconds. And for your last, it's hard to say. The 6th slot is really not important. There's not many good gem effects. I would say probably Abiding Curse. This will help a bit in PvP. This is a powerful debuff for that. And it does help in higher level content, being able to add a bunch of slows to the mobs. If you want damage, you could even slot in something like Lightning Core. Personally, I'm not a fan of this gem, and I'd rather just go Abiding Curse, but I'll leave that up to you. If you are a light spender, and you maybe awakened a slot or two, I would just first, of course, go for a Berserker's Eye. Definitely the best all-around gem if you want an awakened slot, especially on Wizard. Second option would be Trickshot Gem. Or no, not Trickshot Gem, I'm sorry. Everlasting Torment. This, since it's your critical hits inflict agony, dealing extra damage, well, if you're using a Firestorm build, you're getting a lot of AoE critical hits, so this will kind of just apply for free, dealing a lot of extra damage, and it does give you some attack speed as well. And I did want to mention Trickshot Gem though, because I know some people kind of swear by this gem. I'd recommend ignoring it, because typically, if you are using a build with a channeled spell, which is not all the time, then it does only help one skill, because no build can afford multiple channeled skills. And then being able to stand in place for longer really doesn't do that much. I'd rather just kill the target 16% faster than be able to hold down the channeled skill faster. I will leave that up to you, but I'd say overall, this is kind of like the noob trap gem, where it's not really helping your overall power, it's maybe just more fun or lets you stand in place for longer. And getting into the builds themselves, my first one, this is kind of like your speed build. You can see I have it right here. And what you're doing here is overworld farming, Elder Rifts, Purge the Depths, anything that's pretty like trivial, easy content, where what you're worried about is doing it as fast as possible, not really worried about killing enemies. So, you'll probably want to use Treasure Hunter, but if you are doing something like Elder Rift or Purge of the Depths, you can kind of just use whatever Paragon tree. Usually for those activities it doesn't matter. So something like Duelist, Mastermind if you have a group, Vanquisher even for like Elder Rifts. And that's probably about it. The skills I'm using are Electrocute for the primary, Teleport, and Teleport I would say is core, where no matter what you want to change in this build, always want to keep Teleport. Lightning Nova, this is the same as Teleport, where I think it's absolutely core for these type of activities, because it's a low cooldown, and we use a legendary to increase our move speed. Disintegrate, I do think this is quite important, where if you're not in a spot where you can quickly kill, say like yellow elites, orange elites, bosses that might spawn, this is kind of your best damage boost, and then the range and damage on it does help for clearing up packs that might have survived your other skills as well. And Scorch, this ability is kind of interchangeable, but I'd say it's more the legendary essence that's interchangeable rather than the skill itself. Yeah, nothing else really will help you that much for overworld farming. And the essences I'm using, Fire Flurry, this is for Scorch. This is what turns it into a rolling fireball. What helps about this for overworld farming is since it leaves a AoE on the floor, it kind of helps clean up a pact where you can just toss it and run. Although, I wouldn't say it's the best, and it's kind of up to personal preference, because Memory of Zhao Yu, this is really good too for overworld farming. It's still low cooldown. You get 4 different instances of an AoE, explosion, and I've tried out both. I do like both, and there are things I don't like about both. So it's kind of just up to personal preference. There is one more essence that in many Immortal reigns and many months of playing Wizard, I have never gotten this drop. And I've never seen someone use it, so I'm not sure how effective it is. Maybe it is just like a bad item, or it could be maybe a sleeper item because no one's using it. When I read the description, it does sound like it could be very good for overworld farming. However, I'd have to try it out to really tell you for sure. So if you do have this item and you've tried it out, let me know down in the comments below if it's good at all. And the reason why we kind of use a Fire Lightning Nova with our chest here, as well as on the shoulders, a Fire Disintegrate Ray, and then our helmet being a fire spell as well, is the Grace of the Flagellant. The way it's every time you damage an enemy 5 times, you do additional damage. These add different instances of tick damage that kind of all stack together to where when you're hitting them with your primary attack, they have like 2 or 3 burns on them. This will trigger constantly. So for your single target damage like bosses, it'll just keep hitting them with that lightning bolt, dealing a lot of single target damage, or even just when you're killing packs in the Overworld or Elder Rift, you hit a pack with one ability and it will do some damage, light them on fire, and then this will usually finish them off. So you don't have to do anything other than throw out one skill. And that's kind of why we use 3 fire abilities, and then teleport of course to get around faster. For the pants, we are using Chaos Nexus, and I don't think this is... I'm not sure yet if it's the best item, or there might be multiple best items kind of depending on your preference. I do like this because that extra ray on the Disintegrate, that also synergizes with the 4-piece Grace for the Flagellant, where it's an extra tick of damage on an enemy, so you're able to trigger that single target damage more. And this extra beam, it can target kind of like the main target you're hitting as well. So if there's only one enemy like a boss, and you're hitting them with Disintegrate, they'll also get the extra beam shot at them. So it kind of does extra single target damage as well as extra Grace procs. If you did want to use some other pants, another good one is Caval's Grand Revelation. Each time you kill an enemy with Disintegrate, they'll explode. So it kind of helps with your AoE. I find Chaos Nexus to be better, since typically your AoE is good enough, and then you'll have the Chaos Nexus for additional damage on single target like Yellow Elite, Orange Elite, bosses. And for your shoulders, where I'm using the Fire Disintegrate, one other option you can use is the Perfect Situation, where after you cast Teleport, you get increased movement speed. It's about 2 seconds, I would say, for the duration, and I tried it out. It's okay, but I found with my playstyle I didn't usually get much of a benefit, where I would typically teleport and then use a skill right away like Disintegrate, so I'd be held in place and not getting the benefit out of this, and then slower kill speed since you're not using the Fire Disintegrate. But you can try it out, see if you like it. For my weapon, where's the name? Forget what it's called, and I have the reservist gear, so it doesn't say, but it increases your Disintegrate damage by 10%. I have tried Electrospike here, and I do think both are good, but especially with the recent changes after the update introducing Health 6, 7, and 8, where we have a slightly lower total damage from our combat rating, going from, I believe it was 22%, now down to a 10% max. I find the extra damage on Disintegrate is a lot more useful than extra bounces on the Electro Spike. However, you can try out both, see what you prefer. And your offhand, casting Lightning Nova increases your movement speed by 60%. This is definitely core, since our goal is to kind of teleport around, kill mobs as fast as possible. So then you can teleport, cast your Lightning Nova for more speed, and then for my overworld farming, I do use 2-piece Isatar as well, and that kind of all stacks together to let you get around quickly. And that about covers it for the overworld farming. And for the next build, I'm going to go over a Firestorm build. Despite all of the newly released items for Wizard over the past couple patches, I still find kind of the classic Firestorm build to be the most effective. And most of these items I think are core, to where you don't really want to change them out. For your Paragon tree, depending on whether you're running, say, raids, dungeons, other maybe like combat or challenge rifts, you'll want to use Mastermind if you're in a group, especially if you have 4 different classes. Otherwise, I have been trying out Duelist, and I think it has potential. The only thing I don't like is it doesn't say here. It just says the stacks are removed when you take damage, but there is a time limit on them as well. It seems to be about 12 seconds, I would say. I'm not sure if it's affected by like beneficial effect duration, but it does time out, which is unfortunate. I thought it would kind of last for as long as until you take damage, but between that, kind of just depends on your playstyle. You might find good use in that. Typically, the other trees for that type of content, I don't find much use in them. Some people like Vanquisher, but I find it to only help in areas where they don't matter. And for our skills, we are using Magic Missile instead of Electrocute. Reason for this is it has a higher base damage. It can be body blocked, which is annoying, but overall, I think you'll get more damage, especially single target out of the Magic Missile. We are using Arcane Wind, Meteor, Scorch, and Disintegrate. And the legendaries we use are Fire Flurry. This is the Magma Ball again. For Firestorm, this is pretty core. I wouldn't recommend changing it out for a different skill, because the field of fire that it leaves behind helps make it more consistent with your Arcane Wind, that they'll be burning when they get hit by that, so it increases your damage overall. For the chest piece, we don't really have much that work with our skills. Kind of the best one is the Meteor Radius, so I just use that. Shoulders, definitely use the Fire Disintegrate Ray. Since we're using a Firestorm build, every additional proc of fire is great. For our legs, we're using Meteor Shower. There are some other options that I'll go over, but I found Meteor Shower to be the most consistent. The weapon, we're using Hungering Wind. This turns our Arcane Wind into a tornado. That's definitely the key part of the Firestorm build, since that will keep ticking and inflicting critical damage. And for our offhand, we're using the Unrepentant Gale. This is also core, gives us an extra charge of Arcane Wind, so it gives you more consistent procs where you can use it on multiple packs, or even just additional burst damage for bosses. And then for our legs, this is the only piece that I'd say is interchangeable, where you could try out some different essences. With our build, I'd say Galebringer's Leggings. This would be good for additional single target damage, since your Arcane Wind is increased, and that's your ability that's going to always crit. Another one being Chaos Nexus, just to add some additional single target damage with Disintegrate. Everything else I wouldn't worry about, kind of just these 3 options. And the reason why I go with the Meteor Shower is, especially with our chest piece increasing the range, you can see that's a really big circle. So it's more consistent with killing mob packs, more range, and hitting more mobs that way, as well as some bosses that move around. Helps make sure that they're staying in your AoE, where with the smaller meteor, sometimes they move out of the way and you're losing out on damage that way. And our next build is a Snowstorm build. This one I find to be, although it's good, there's not many areas where I think it's worth using. So we can see I'm using no Disintegrate right now for this build. And the reason for that is the only places I would find this useful, since it's based on a CC, is something like a Challenge Rift where you're maybe a couple hundred combat rating behind, or if you're kind of like pre-farming or just trying to get into a new hell level and you're behind a bit in combat rating and you need the CC, that's where I would use it. And the reason why I'm not using Disintegrate is because in those areas I find it difficult to stand in one place with Disintegrate. However, if you've played Wizard for a long time, maybe you can work around that. I would change out Lightning Nova with Disintegrate if you were thinking about that. Right here, I'm using Magic Missile as well, because typically when you're under the CR, you're not going to be pulling a large pack, and then Magic Missile will help your single target damage for like the boss at the end of the Challenge Rift, or a boss in a dungeon maybe. We're using Arcane Wind, Meteor, Scorch, and Lightning Nova, our legendary affixes. We're using Fire Flurry. Not only does this give us a fire ability to work with our Grace set and the Hungering Wind, but it also has a stun, which is pretty important typically for, burns and stuns. This is important for when you're behind, since any additional CC will help keep you alive. We're using Alora's Fervor, since we're using Lightning Nova, just to get an extra fire ability, since our Meteor is no longer a fire ability due to the Snowstorm pants here, where it's now a Snowstorm that continually damages and chills. The shoulders I would use are Meteor now deals 35% increased damage to frozen targets, and the reason why is because in combination with our Hungering Wind, we're using the Alder Crystal, which makes it so Arcane Wind now freezes an enemy if they're already chilled, and then it can kind of keep proccing over and over on enemies, since there's no reduction to CC each time an enemy is CC'd. So with this combo, you kind of keep them locked in the Snowstorm, completely frozen with the Hungering Wind, and then your Meteor's dealing increased damage from the shoulders, and then we have our fire abilities to still proc Firestorm on the Hungering Wind. If we were to fit in Disintegrate, I'd replace Lightning Nova, and for our chest, we don't need Alora's Fervor anymore, so I would use the Meteor Radius Increased again. And then for our shoulders, you might be better off using the Fire Disintegrate, and then your build would look something like this. As far as Paragon Tree, I'm not spec'd into Survivor right now, but typically for the type of content you'd be doing, you might want to spec into Survivor if it's a Challenge Rift, or something like Mastermind or Duelist if you're using it for like dungeons. And then of course if you're open world farming, you'd use Treasure Hunter. Just kind of depends where you're using the build. And that about covers the build options here, guys. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you've tried either similar builds to these or the exact build maybe. Let me know if there's anything you think I missed down in the comments below, and I'll get back to you right away and let you know what I think, or if I haven't tried it out yet. And if you've watched this far, make sure to hit that subscribe button and that like button, and I'll see you next time. Peace.